Each and every one of them could have chosen another path, but they don't. They choose to serve and to do something more important than themselves. And every day they meet the nation's challenges from combat operations to critical support roles with the courage, tenacity, and grit that keeps our nation strong and secure. I would also like to express my deep gratitude for the 39 members of our joint force who've passed away during my time as the chairman, including 14 who've passed during Operation Epic Fury. As the secretary said, we are deeply grateful for each of them and their families, and their names will never be forgotten. As the chairman, my duty is to ensure our civilian leadership has a comprehensive range of military options and the associated risks that to those leaders who make the nation's hardest decisions, and offer my military advice privately. I owe the president, the secretary, and the Congress the truth at every turn. My blueprint for this role is General George C. Marshall. His commitment to civilian control of the military and nonpartisan military remains a constant standard and something I borrow from often. I strive daily to emulate his candor, delivering the facts to our leaders and telling them always what they need to hear, not always what they want to hear. And once a decision is made, executing it with absolute dedication, and that is the demand of our profession. I sit here today before you representing our incredible joint force, and I want to emphasize my commitment to this committee and the Congress that I will always follow General Marshall's steadfast example as by providing clear and candid nonpartisan military advice and working together with our civilian leaders to ensure that our military does the things that we must do, being prepared to deter and defend our nation, and if called upon, win our wars around the world. America's joint force is operational at its core, purpose-built for the realities of a complex and ever-changing world. We are organized, trained, and equipped to execute the most demanding missions across the globe with unrivaled precision. Over the past year, our warfighters have consistently demonstrated exactly what it means to be the most capable, adaptable, and most professional military force in the world. Our shared goals are to ensure the joint force maintains the strategic initiative and advantage, projecting American power and responding to global challenges on our nation's terms. During operations Rough Rider, Midnight Hammer, Southern Spear, Absolute Resolve, and Epic Fury, the joint force executed globally integrated operations and missions alongside our interagency and international partners. And once our civilian leaders made a decision, we make those missions our own, demonstrating the unmatched capability to seamlessly synchronize our capabilities across all domains, from the seabed to cislunar space and higher. We're able to accomplish these complicated missions and work because we draw from a deep, enduring reservoir of training, professionalism, and commitment. Our operational tempo is high, but we're designed to sustain and rebuild our strength continuously. We build readiness every day. We train professionals every day. We learn and sharpen our edges every day by being learning leaders. And I am incredibly proud to be a member of this joint force team, proud of the team and proud of the commanders. As the chairman and the ranking member both said, we live in complex and dynamic times where global risk is scaling. The complexity of today's modern battlefields demands our constant adaptation, innovation, and partnership with this Congress. As a joint force, we're up to the challenge. We're built for this environment. However, continued success is not guaranteed by past achievements. It must be secured through forward-looking partnerships with Congress. And to drive this pace and change and maintain our superiority, we need timely, predictable, and sustained investment. The resources we discussed today are critical to modernizing our force and ensuring that whatever threats emerge in the future, that your joint force is ready to meet those challenges, to protect our interests and defend our nation. As the Secretary The President's fiscal year 2027 budget supports the department's goals of recharging the defense industrial base and the national industrial base, ensuring our military is ready, securing our military advantage. Within the joint force, the uniform side, our priorities remain the same, ensuring our warfighters are properly armed, globally integrated, and ready, while always taking care of our people. And what truly sets our people apart from other militaries around the world is the 1.8 million members, enlisted members of our force, who maintain readiness beyond reproach and are the envy of every other nation. I'm joined today by the senior enlisted advisor to the chairman, Dave Isom, who's here with me today representing the 1.8 million members of the enlisted force. He is a great American, not an Americant. While we face dynamic and a dangerous world, I have the absolute trust in the extraordinary men and women who come and volunteer to serve our nation within our joint force. They execute the missions quietly every day, and coupled with the American spirit, outthink, outcompete, and relentlessly innovate, we will maintain our decisive edge, but doing so requires your partnership. We stand ready today to answer our nation's call. It remains the honor of a lifetime for me to serve alongside the members of this joint force. And as we sit here today in this important hearing, I ask us all to remember our deployed teammates who are out there right now doing our nation's business. And may we again always remember our fallen, who've given us the gift of an incredible example, and their family members who continue to show us what courage and grit look like. Thank you again for your enduring support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. I recognize myself now for questions. Secretary Hegseth, thank you for undertaking the Arsenal of Freedom tour and the great work the department's doing to help enhance our capacity in our defense industrial base. Could you tell us how last year's reconciliation bill helped enable what you have been able to do, and what you think this year's FY27 budget request will do on that front?
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership and your support on that topic. I mean, coming into this position, we fell in on a lot of the reforms you and this committee have been advocating for a long time, looking for somebody that was willing to run with them. And our department have run with those. And that reconciliation bill last year was kind of the rocket fuel to initiate President Trump's priorities in this department. So we fell in on a department that was focused on a lot of the wrong things, going in the wrong direction. And with reconciliation, we were able to put, $22 billion in shipbuilding, $22 billion into Golden Dome, $25 billion into munitions, established drone dominance, which we're continuing to do this day in this next budget funds. So getting in front of that budget cycle, which had been notoriously unpredictable, coming out of the continuing resolution of FY25, to fund this and then a historic bill in FY26, laid the groundwork for this historic budget to ensure that we're not coming at a cold start here. We came into this administration. Reconciliation was a beautiful tool. We were able to use that through that one big beautiful bill to fund the priorities of this department. We spent on $4 billion on barracks, started immediately getting after the quality of life of barracks. Because of the austerity of the Biden administration, we traded off of maintenance, traded off of quality of life to try to fund other things operationally. This budget stops that cycle and both invests in sustainment and modernization, which is something that's critically important. So without that reconciliation bill, I think, Mr. Chairman, we'd be in a very different place. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, as you are aware, the expansion of the defense industrial base is the principal focus of this year's NDAA. So in addition to enacting this budget request that's been submitted, we want to work with you to enhance the department's statutory authorities to improve the capacity of our DIB. What additional changes in law, such as the additional multi-year block buy authority, would you recommend that we pursue in this year's NDAA?
A few aspects of the acquisition transformation that's been undertaken by Undersecretary Duffy in acquisitions and sustainment. So there's some aspects of that we'd like to codify even more. But you mentioned it, multi-year procurement is incredibly important and one of the most important parts of this bill. When this committee and this Congress funds those things, companies are already breaking ground on tens of billions of dollars of new plants. You name we've got 14 in our ammunition council that we're focusing on certain ammunitions, there are 14 that are critical. You know, PAC-3s, SM-3s, SM-6s, THAADs, Patriots, Tomahawks, AMRAAMs, JASSMs, you name prisms, you name them. We were building them at too slow and too low a level. Now the companies are going to pay for those factories and those production lines. And when Congress gives those 5 to 7 year demand signals, they'll then fund it. Not just, hey, can we get 10 more per month, but can we 2x, 3x, 4x the production, pay for it now, and the companies invest accordingly. So it's been a critical aspect of some of what we've done so far, but we need more of those 5 to 7 year investments.
Great. General Caine, what does the $1.5 trillion budget mean for the warfighter and our ability to project forces and secure our interests around the globe?
Chairman, you know, in my view, this represents a historic down payment on future security. If the budget is approved and ultimately deployed, as we look at the character of warfare changing very, very fast, what's layered in to this budget by our civilian leaders will allow us to start getting ahead of where technology is evolving. And as I mentioned, the character of warfighting is changing pretty quickly. Mass, simultaneity, autonomy, undersea, space, cyber, information, all of those ways that are now manifesting themselves on the battlefields around the world require a higher end of capital investment. And that's why we're grateful for the opportunity to have this budget make its way to the joint force. So it's an important down payment on the future here, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
With that, I yield to the ranking member for any questions he may have.
Thank you. Mr. Hurst, drag you into the conversation here. We have not yet received from the Pentagon the costs of the war. So just for the record, we'd like to get that as soon as possible. Certainly the munitions expended, but also underreported is we've had a fair amount of equipment destroyed, including 2 C-130s with the rescue of our downed airmen. So do you have either A, a cost estimate coming to us anytime soon, or B, a specific supplemental request?
Thank you for that question. So approximately at this day, we're spending about $25 billion on Operation Epic Fury. Most of that is munitions. There's part of that is obviously O&M and equipment replacement. We will formulate a supplemental through the White House that will come to Congress once we have a full assessment of the cost of the conflict.
Sure. So you're saying the full cost at this point is $25 billion?
Yeah, that's our estimate for the cost.
Okay. Interesting, because I'm glad you answered that question, because we've been asking for a hell of a long time and no one's given us the number. So if you could get those details over to us, that would be great. Mr. Secretary, you mentioned the nuclear aspect of Iran and the war. And it is worth noting that every president prior to this one, including President Trump in his first term, also prevented Iran from getting a nuclear weapon without actually having to go to war in Iran. So we need to keep that in mind. But also, since the war started, Iran's nuclear arsenal has not been weakened in any way. And at the moment in negotiations, what Iran is saying, basically pay us to open up the strait. That's their position, which is completely untenable. I agree. It's worth noting, of course, that the strait was open before the war started. Now we're negotiating to get back to status quo. And Iran's most recent offer is to say, we'll talk about nukes later. So what is the plan to actually turn all of this lethal kinetic action into an improvement in the nuclear situation? Because we haven't gotten there yet. Play it out for us. How does that happen? How does it actually lead to that result?
Well, I would take issue with the premise of the question that nothing was done. Operation Midnight Hammer was a very effective.
Well, I didn't say nothing was done. I said in this war.
Ultimately,
this war started.
well, this under this administration, unlike other administrations, which cut bad deals and pallets of cash with no ability to oversee whether Iran is actually pursuing a nuclear program. So
where
if we want to litigate JCPOA or the Iran deal, our view, the president's views, that was a very bad deal.
Okay.
It gave them a
That's
bunch
the
of money up
past.
front
What's the future?
to fund. You talked about negotiated deals. Allowed them to fund their proxies and spread Hamas and Hezbollah all around the region, build up nuclear capabilities.
What are we going to do now?
President Trump has been clear-eyed, from the killing of Qasem Soleimani to the pulling out of the Iran deal to Midnight Hammer and now to this effort to recognize that you have to stare down this kind of enemy who's hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon and get them to a point where they're at the table giving it up in a way that
So they
never
haven't
have it.
So they haven't broken yet. Okay, we haven't gotten there yet for all of the.
Well, their
lethal
nuclear
kinetic-
facilities have been obliterated underground. They're buried, and
Whoa,
we're
whoa, whoa,
watching
whoa,
them
whoa, 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 whoa,
24/7.
whoa, 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 whoa.
So we know where
Whoa, whoa,
any
whoa, whoa,
nuclear material
Reclaiming
might
my
be.
time for
We're
just a
watching
quick
it.
second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely
They
obliterated?
had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands
So
of missiles.
Operation Midnight
at the
Hammer
weakest
accomplished
moment-
nothing of substance. It
No, you're
left us
missing-
at
you're
exactly
missing
the
the
same
point.
place we were before. So
Their,
much so
their
that we had to
facilities
start
were
a
bombed
war.
and obliterated. Their ambitions continued, and they're building a conventional
All
shield.
right,
of
let me
missiles.
try again.
It's the North
pa-
Korea strategy. You know this very well. The North
I
Korea
know.
strategy was use conventional missiles to prevent anybody from challenging them so they could slow walk their way to a weapon. President Trump saw Iran at its weakest moment, took an action to ensure in a way that only the United States of America could do with our Israeli partners
And yet
to
they
ensure their
still haven't given
conventional
up the nuclear.
shield was
All right.
was
I
brought
have
to
one other
heel, which we've
question,
done.
if I could get to it. So on Ukraine, a year plus ago, your advice, the president's advice was Ukraine had no cards to play. They should go cut the best possible deal they could. Clearly that was wrong. What did you miss? What did you miss about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine that you didn't see that Ukraine was going to be capable of doing what they've done in the last 14 months?
What we didn't miss, and we're here in this committee, is that Joe Biden, with no accountability, gave hundreds of billions of dollars of our weapons to Ukraine, to an outcome that
So
never
you're
would
not
have
gonna
happened
an-
if
you're not
President
gonna
Trump
answer
was
the
president.
question.
So he pulled out you guys don't talk about that. Ultimately, President Trump believes there should be
Okay.
a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. That serves
But you
the best
didn't
interest
expect
of both
Ukraine to be
parties.
where they're at right now. I'm asking you just from a strategic
Listen,
standpoint.
I
What
think
did
the
you miss?
Ukrainians have shown great courage, and I appreciate that Europe is now paying for any weapons that we provide.
All right, I yield back. Thank you.
All right, now I want to remind everybody, everybody wants to get their questions, so we are going to be sticking strictly to the 5-minute rule today. So with that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman Mike Rogers, for your leadership working with President Donald Trump. As the grateful father of 4 sons who've served overseas in Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan, I especially appreciate War Secretary Hegseth and Chief of Staff Caine for your competence, service, and success. Military families have never been more appreciated than today, and our enemies of dictators now understand peace through strength. Dictators historically are on the run. With your leadership, President Trump has given Syria a chance with President al-Shara replacing dictator Assad from Damascus, who now lives in Moscow. Dictator Maduro is correctly in a Manhattan jail, as you successfully revealed in Caracas that the war criminal Putin air defenses do not work, the Chinese Communist Party radar failed, and Cuban mercenaries were expendable. The Cuban dictatorship is failing, and the ultimate mass murderer, dictator Khomeini, is dead in Tehran, Iran, joining the 35,000 people he murdered this year. With your leadership, American morale has never been higher, and hopes for freedom of the oppressed people of Iran, Cuba, Russia, and China have never been higher. And it's just an exciting time to be here with you. And Mr. Secretary, we continue to see the growing nuclear threat of our adversaries as they expand their capabilities with the largest military buildup in peacetime in world history by the Chinese Communist Party. How critical is it that we continue, as at the Savannah River site in South Carolina, to develop the plutonium pit processing so that we have modernization?
Well, Congressman, I appreciate that question. On nuclear modernization, this budget funds $71 billion to modernize the triad in ways that we had neglected to do, and our nuclear triad underwrites everything. But I really appreciate your opening statement. I think something that obviously the media doesn't want to cover and doesn't want to talk about is the historic record-breaking surge in recruiting in our ranks. 30-year record in recruiting of Americans wanting to join our joint force, wanting to put the uniform on. We're meeting recruiting goals halfway through the year. We couldn't meet our recruiting goals under the previous administration. Under Joe Biden, Americans didn't want to join the military. We couldn't get it. Now we have to turn people away and push them to the next fiscal year. That's why this budget grows our force by almost 50,000. Ultimately, additional troops into the force that we believe we can recruit. That's the best vote of confidence I can imagine.
Well,
from the
hey,
American people. And
even
not just
better, hey,
recruiting,
Mr.
it's also
Secretary,
retention.
you're really understating. leaving
sorry.
no airmen behind. Hey, what an inspiration on Easter Day. God bless y'all and what you've achieved. With that in mind, too, General Caine, with your VMI military perspective, War Colonel Putin is losing in Ukraine as his 30-day special mission is now 4 years of, as the Secretary has identified, courageous Ukrainian success led by President Vladimir Zelensky. I appreciate that NATO and the EU have unified for Ukraine as the U.S. ranks 17th per GDP in assistance for Ukraine. Ukraine is frontline, stopping War Colonel Putin from resurrecting the failed Soviet Union, rigging elections in Belarus, invading Ukraine, keeping troops in Moldova, and with the Indvaishvili invading and rigging elections in the Republic of Georgia. As we're transitioning greater responsibility to our NATO allies, how do we ensure seamless integration to have deterrence during this shift?
Congressman, we're very fortunate to have great leaders out in the European theater right now. General Grinkovich and his leadership team are committed to ensuring that integration and transition takes place in a most combat capable and effective way. Very entrepreneurial leaders out there across the components, and with General Grinkovich, and he's doing a great job out there, as the committee knows.
And indeed, as we conclude, historically, President Trump, Mr. Secretary General, you have united the Middle East nations unprecedented to ally with the United States. You have united Latin America unprecedented to ally with the United States. You've united the Indo-Pacific unprecedented to ally with the United States, and united NATO and EU unprecedented to ally with the United States. You're achieving peace and deterrence through strength. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair not recognized. Gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary and General Caine, this morning's Wall Street Journal's lead headline reads, quote, Trump tells aides to prepare for an extended blockade of Iran. It goes on to describe, again, the thinking behind the strategy, but also talks about how prolonging the blockade is going to continue to drive up energy costs all over the world. Given the ever-changing messages from this administration on the war strategy and timeline, I really honestly don't expect you to confirm or deny the Journal story. But one thing is clear. The number of transits across the Strait of Hormuz has dropped to the lowest level since the war began, and commodity markets have stopped listening to the happy talk, and crude oil prices this morning have risen to the highest level since the war in Ukraine started in 2022. AAA reported this morning that the average price of gas is $4.30 a gallon, up 30 cents in 1 week. Diesel's average is $5.45. My friend, Mr. Garamendi, says in California, it's closer to $8 a gallon. And fertilizer prices have also hammered farmers at exactly the same time they're beginning planting all across the country. Aside from the damage this war has done to American consumers, farmers, and small businesses, I want to focus for a minute on the cost of the war and our military readiness, particularly to other combatant commands. Mr. Secretary, you put out a national defense strategy in January, which listed the threat assessment facing our country. China was number one, with the second largest, most powerful military in the world, of course. Russia's nuclear force, clearly it was number two in terms of the threat they pose to the homeland. North Korea, which has missiles that actually can reach U.S. territory, was ranked number three, and Iran was described as, quote, and accurately after Midnight Hammer, that Iran's regime is weaker and more vulnerable than it has been in decades. Again, this was before February 28th, when the decision was made to go in the military strikes on Iran. So today we have 3 carrier strike forces in Central Command. The Indo-PACOM, which is where Russia and China are operating their navies, 52% of the globe. We have 1 carrier strike group in Japan, George Washington. And the imbalance in terms of just, what our commitments and frankly, what our national defense strategy, is just blindingly obvious in terms of what this war is doing. Gerald Ford is on day 312 of its deployment. They've gone through fires, plumbing problems, and again, an extended deployment, which in my opinion is hitting readiness as hard as anything I've seen in the time that I've been on this committee. So General Caine, I mean, in terms of, again, the carrier strike groups that are over there, I mean, assuming that we get to some end game here, Ford is not going over to the Indo-Pacific to buttress the gap that exists there today. They've got to go back into pretty heavy repair and availability in terms of trying to recover from their deployment. So again, in terms of just, the decisions about where we're putting people and putting really the most powerful part of our Navy, can you explain again what that means in terms of the situation in Indo-PACOM, where China is watching? We saw Mr. Rogers' pretty powerful presentation in terms of the buildup that's happening in that part of the world. How does that align with the National Defense Strategy, which was just put out by this administration in January?
Well, sure. First, I want to echo your comments on the Ford Strike Group. Fantastic work by incredible sailors, not just the Ford herself, but the other ships as well, on a historic cruise, doing incredible work for the
But
nation.
excuse me, how does that balance with the National
Well,
Defense Strategy?
yes, sir. Happy to answer the way I think about this. The national security strategy and national defense strategy are frameworks, but a president will employ national force and power based on the political and security situations that a president deems appropriate to use that military force. There's always trade-offs in all of these things. I'm confident that the president always carefully considers these readiness trade-offs, and I'm sure he has done so in this case based on the military options that we've presented with the associated risks and
Well,
advice.
to make a trade going after a regime that's weaker and more vulnerable than it has been in decades, which is quote unquote from the Defense Strategies report, does not, in my opinion, in common sense.
Gentleman's time's expired. As you can tell from looking at the dais, votes have been called. So we are now going to stand in recess to the end of this vote. I expect it to take 20 to 25 minutes, but we are now in recess.